On the mic with us today is Judge Rosemarie Aquilina, a powerhouse in the courtroom, a passionate educator in the classroom, and an empowering voice on the page.
You know that people who cover the news see the worst of the worst, right? They're on the spot for every deadly scene, every good scene, whatever it is, right? Throughout most of the trial, they were silently crying, and many of them had visible tears. Okay. So it was emotional. Now, where does this begin with me? I was in practice for 20 years before I ever took the bench and is doing civilian and military law, very immersed in the law. And I was in front of a lot of judges who really just didn't give a damn. And I made a commitment to myself because I always knew I wanted to be a judge, that I would give people time, that they own the courtroom, that I would not say things to victims that shut them up and shut them out because they didn't deserve that. So from the first day I took, first of all, the district bench where I served for 4 years, which is misdemeanors and smaller civil cases, $25,000 and under. And then eventually I moved up after 4 years to circuit court, which is the felonies and the civil cases of $25,000 and over. And from the first day I took the bench, I let people speak. And why? And it's for as long as they want. I define victim in the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which allows victims to be notified of what's going on and have access to the courtroom and all of those things. The problem is that judges want to get to the golf course or get to the next case or what have you. I don't care. Every single case to me is unique and independent and deserves its time, whether it's for the victim and their family and whoever was affected or defendant and their families. It's always important to give them that space. But here's an example.
Many recognize Judge Rosemarie as the judge who gave hundreds of survivors a voice during the Larry Nassar sentencing. Today we're exploring her new book, Speak Up, which serves as both a pep talk and a call to action. This is Rise and Thrive with Ms. Monday. I'm your host, a photographer, filmmaker, and artist devoted to telling stories of brave souls who are standing up, speaking truth, and building something better. My podcast is independently created and powered by passion, just my soul connecting with your soul. If something here moves you on the show, I'd be honored if you'd like, subscribe, and share it. Your support fuels this movement, and it means more than you know, so thank you. Thank you for listening. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Judge Rosemarie Aquilina. Thank you so much, Rosemarie, for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I can't wait to have this discussion with you. Love your podcast.
Wonderful. So you're a powerhouse in the courtroom. Listeners, many might recognize Rosemarie as a judge who gave over 100 survivors a voice during the Larry Nassar sentencing. But your impact goes beyond headlines, and you're also a retired military officer and a fierce advocate for justice. It's a real honor to have you here. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So in preparation to this conversation, we had a very short chat, but we talked a little bit about your upbringing and how it might have shaped your path. I loved the story, but I would love for you to share it with the listeners. Could you begin by sharing a bit about your early life and how it might have influenced your journey into this remarkable career that you have of seeking justice?
Sure. I think we're all shaped by our backstories, and mine includes that my father and his adult siblings and grandparents emigrated from Malta to Detroit. My dad joined the military, met my mother, who was German, and they were married a year later. He went to medical school, and she, of course, gets pregnant with me right away, and then my brother 11 months and 2 days later. So with 2 crying babies, he couldn't study. And my mother emigrated with myself and my brother to Detroit to live with my grandparents. Now, as an infant, I don't know who my parents are. I know that I'm being cared for, right? Babies cry when they need something and they laugh when they're happy. And that was me. And we went to live with my grandparents, who in Malta, in Maltese, Nunnu means grandfather and Nunna means grandmother. And their youngest child, my uncle, Ben, was, I think, a senior in high school. So he was there calling my grandparents Ma and Pa. I was calling them Nunnu and Nunna. And in my little brain, I equated Nunnu and Nunna with dad and mom.
Mm.
So I saw my dad once a year, maybe. We were very poor. They couldn't afford the plane fare. And of course, he was in medical school. He's Maltese. He's learning German. He's in medical school in Germany, all the things that are going on. He doesn't have much time to see us. My mother's working in a bank. I'm sorry. Well, I don't remember if it was a bank or insurance company, honestly, but downtown Detroit, I didn't see her much because she was working, the 9 to 5. And it was my grandparents who I saw. And I would get up at
Mm.
4:30 in the morning with my grandfather and my brother and have coffee with him before he went to work for Ford. And then he came home at 2 o'clock. And that's who I remember is my grandparents. And my mother was more like my older sister.
Mm.
Fast forward, my father comes back. I'm 5 years old, almost 6. I'm ready to go to kindergarten. And there's the car packed up with my belongings, and we are moving away.
Mm.
No one told me that my grandparents were my grandparents, that my dad was coming back, that my mother was my mother.
Mm.
And I was very confused. So in my little brain, I was being kidnapped.
Mm.
And I felt ripped, literally, from the parents who I knew to go to a place that was strange with a man I had seen a few times like Santa Claus, and with a mom I considered more like an older sister, and of course, my brother, who was very close to me.
Mm.
That shaped the rest of my life. I was always the problem child. I said red, and my parents said blue. I mean, we never matched on anything. And of course, years later, I reconciled that with the benefit of having
Mm.
two sets of parents.
Mm.
As I wasn't mistreated and I was loved, I was given what I needed, and I saw my grandparents, but it took me many, many, many years to understand that my grandparents were my grandparents. In my head,
Mm.
they will always be my first set of parents. It doesn't matter about the biology.
Mm.
And so I reconciled it that I was blessed to have two sets of parents. So when I lost my grandparents, I had my parents.
Mm.
And I think you have to flip the script in your own head and treat yourself with kindness and give yourself that room to have misunderstandings, to make mistakes, to learn from them and to move forward. And that's what I learned is I have two sets of parents. However, the feeling of not being heard, not feeling like I mattered, I didn't have a voice, and that I
Mm.
was too stupid to be explained this, because years later, when I said to my mother, I don't understand why this wasn't explained to me, she said, "Were you stupid? What did you think?" And she didn't mean it in a mean way, but it never occurred to her to explain to a young child what was going on. So I
Mm.
advocate to talk to children, even when they just know how to say yes, no, mom, dad, what's
Mhm.
going on, because eventually they will understand it. They do
Mhm.
have a voice. They need to know. For me, being kidnapped, that feeling never has left,
Mm.
ever.
That's devastating for anyone, let alone a child, being taken away from something that's your comfort and your home. So I'm so sorry you had to endure that. I I could only imagine
You
what
know
you.
what? Each of us have sort of that backstory, and we carry it
Yeah.
with us, and it's really what you do with it.
Yeah. For sure. It's
So I am
true.
who I am because it happened to me.
Now, you've written a book, this book that we're talking about today called Speak Up. How does this compare to your previous works, and what inspired you to write it?
My previous books were fiction, and I love fiction, and I write fiction. And then Reese Witherspoon, I met her, and she loved my story and said, "You have to write your memoir." I said, "Aren't I a little too young to write a memoir?" And she said, "No, no, no. We want to know, in the Nassar case, how did you know, with all the people in the world, how did you know? How did you learn to ask, what would you like me to know, and how can I help?" So it's really my backstory, a lot more in detail than what I started to tell you, your first question about my background. But the lessons I've learned, it's a little tiny bit about Nassar, because that's really not my story. Now, I was testifying before Parliament
Mm.
And I met Sanjay Berman, who contacted me and said, We need your voice. We want to know more." And he really wanted me to tell the stories of what I've learned, how I think, to help younger women, maybe 16, 17, 18 on up to my age or even older, because not everybody learns those lessons. They struggle, they don't know what to look for. And I, by no means, think that I am perfect. I learn something every single day, but we all
Mm.
can learn from each other, especially women. And he asked me if I'd be interested, and I thought, hell yes, because I am told so many times by my students and actually by people who appear in front of me who I sentence to jail or prison.
Mm.
Thank you for telling me something, whatever it is in their life that I said to them that resonated. So people need to hear from people they don't know or who they think are in power, somebody who's different in their life. Because really, when we hear from our siblings, our loved ones, our mom and dad, that you're okay, that things will be fine, you only sort of believe that, right?
Mm.
Because they
Mhm.
have to say that. But I don't have to tell you any of those things. And I'm hoping that my lessons will help somebody else think about what's going on and help them in their lives.
Mm. Thank you so much for writing it. It's truly empowering, and I think a lot of people will benefit from reading it. But I wanted to really talk about something about your personality and the heart that you bring into everything that you do. You are known as someone who brings heart into the courtroom, and you've built a powerful reputation who gives people a second chance and a voice. You shared a lot of powerful stories in your book, and obviously some of them you dive deep into, and some of them you just touch briefly upon. But one that stood out to me was when you talked about Emily, the law student who had broken the law. And that kind of struck with me because, obviously from the outside, why is a law student breaking the law? And how can someone begin to trust someone like that, obviously, and let alone hire a person like that? But you clearly saw something different and it was beyond the mistake. How do you, or what would you say to someone like Emily, someone feeling ashamed, maybe after messing up, to find their footing again, especially when they've hurt themselves or maybe someone else, right, along the way? What would you say to that person?
So I deal with people like Emily every single day, and including myself. And the
Mm.
why I say that is because we all make mistakes. It doesn't matter if you're breaking the law or if you're just breaking something that you wanted to do, some goal. If you ate that extra brownie and broke your diet, it doesn't matter. We all make mistakes.
Mm.
It's really what you do with the mistake. Have you learned a lesson from it? Can you
Mm.
flip the script in your head? Can you go forward from it into positivity? When we
Mm.
make mistakes, a lot of people plummet and they say, well, it doesn't matter. I broke my diet or I was sober for this many years or months. And now that I had one drink, I destroyed my reputation. So I'm just going to make it worse.
Mm.
No, we all can recover from our mistakes. It's the lesson that you learn. It's what you do with it. It's how you respond. And things happen for you, not to you. And once you learn that and that you should be your own best friend first, you really are on the path to success and you will make more mistakes. We all do. But it's learning to recover from them in a different state of mind than I don't matter. I made a mistake. So now I'm just going to throw it all out the window. You need to say, yes, and here's another teachable moment. These are all teachable moments. It's like opening up a new classroom door, opening up a new book, and here's a lesson. It's a
Mm.
gift, actually. Mistakes are gifts. And if you flip that script in your mind, you will always succeed.
Oh, I love that. Mistakes are gifts. That's true. Now, in your book, you said you either rule your fears or they rule you. That line kind of hit me. You're known for the Nassar trial. And during the Nassar trial, you made a bold decision and you let over 150 survivors, I think there's more now, break the traditional courtroom norms. And it made headlines. It made the headline news. for various reasons. But I want to know, how did you prepare emotionally for something like that? Because it was a huge emotional responsibility. Just watching a few of those stories, I tear up, and did you have any fears about that choice?
There's a lot there, so let me unpack
Yes.
that.
Yes.
First of
There was a
all,
lot.
I am not surprised to hear that you
Yeah.
teared up. Let me just say that most of the cameramen, in fact, I don't remember any female cameramen in that courtroom, and you wouldn't really see the cameramen, but as they are filming, and you know that people who cover the news see the worst of the worst, right? They're on the spot for every deadly scene, every good scene, whatever it is, right? Throughout most of the trial, they were silently crying, and many of them had visible tears.
Mm.
Okay. So it was emotional. Now,
Mm.
where does this begin with me? I was in practice for 20 years before I ever took the bench and is doing civilian and military law, very immersed in the law. And I was in front of a lot of judges who really just didn't give a damn. And I made a commitment to myself because I always knew I wanted to be a judge, that I would give people time, that they own the courtroom, that I would not say things to victims that shut them up and shut them out because they didn't deserve that. So
Mm.
from the first day I took, first of all, the district bench where I served for 4 years, which is misdemeanors and smaller civil cases, $25,000 and under. And then eventually I moved up after 4 years to circuit court, which is the felonies and the civil cases of $25,000 and over. And from the first day I took the bench, I let people speak. And why? And it's for as long as they want. I define victim in the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which allows victims to be notified of what's going on and have access to the courtroom and all of those things. The problem is that judges want to get to the golf course or get to the next case or what have you. I don't care. Every single case to me is unique and independent and deserves its time, whether it's for the victim and their family and whoever was affected or defendant and their families. It's always important to give them that space. But here's an example. In district court, I had a family whose home was broken into. The only one who was at home at the time was a sister who had been babysitting the house. Now, when this family got home from their vacation and learned the sister had been tied up and all these things that happened, and she was eventually freed and called 911.
Mm.
The whole family was upset. The sister would only come over during the daytime. The family hadn't been there, but they weren't sleeping at night. They got a dog, they got an alarm, they couldn't sleep. No one felt safe. They were as much the victim as the sister who was present, who was actually the victim.
Mm.
They were all victims. They ended up selling their house and moving out of our community because of that fear factor.
Mm.
And the reason is crime doesn't have any borders. So I've always let everybody speak. Anybody who was touched by the crime, I've always taken flack for it. What you saw in Nassar was the media was there, and it was the largest by numbers that I had ever heard. And at that point, that I think the world had seen. I let
Mm.
169 speak, 156 I dubbed sister survivors. The importance of it, however, and why we're still talking about it, because I never anticipated that that would happen. In fact, the seventh day, I would have gone on for weeks for more weeks if I needed, right? The seventh day, I let everybody, it was done. I gave my sentence. I let everybody clear the courtroom. I had a cup of coffee. I went back in the courtroom and did 3 or 4 more cases, thinking this is over. Two days later, there won't be any more articles. We'll be in the next headline. But we're not. And why? Because there were so many lessons listening to those victims, all
Mm.
169. We learned the FBI failed, law enforcement failed, coaches failed, USAG failed, the Olympics failed, many universities and so many people failed, which in my mind makes them co-conspirators to crime. But it was important for those girls to say, and I spoke out and I wasn't heard. And yeah, I didn't plead to that count. Other people did, but he did the same thing to me. So we could look at plan, scheme, design. Because when you look at predators, they don't have a different plan, scheme, design. They all have a way they assault women or men, or boys or girls, as the case may be. They all make it their fault. They all control them by gaslighting, grooming, gifting, ghosting. There's so many things that happen. And what we saw is this pattern emerge, and conversations started to happen, like the one that we're having, which is so important. And I thank you for it. But conversations happened at my own dinner table with my kids, after the case, because I don't talk about it during. But at most of the dinner tables around the world about how did this happen? Why did it happen? How can we stop it? And I think that was really the importance of doing it. But I've always done it because the healing should start in the courtroom, and my scary black robe should be for healing, not just punishment.
I love that. I love that you just said that. So, on this topic,
Yes.
okay, and in your book, you talk about weaponized incompetence, and it can show up in many relationships. And that section also made me pause when I was reading. As a woman who's seen, obviously, so many bad cases, what are some flags that listeners might miss when it comes to emotional imbalance or something that just isn't right? Let it be control or anything in a relationship. What would you say to that?
So the interesting thing about weaponized incompetence is that it is a way of controlling you, and abusers do that. Now, I can tell you, my ex-husband did not abuse me, but he did use weaponized incompetence. So it can come in a lot of different forms. And what is weaponized incompetence? It really is that you need something done, someone offers to help you. Um, and they do help you, but they really don't. What they do is do the wrong thing. Like, I would give my husband a list of 5 things to bring me. He would bring me one thing that I asked for. The other 4 he either didn't find or made sure it was the wrong thing. And so what did I do in my own head? I can't send him to the store.
Mm,
Same thing with doing the dishes or folding the clothes or doing some tasks that I would think in a marriage you should help with, and
mhm.
we should come to some agreement of how, even folding towels, they have to go in a certain way to fit in a cupboard, right?
Yeah.
If they're all messy, they just fall out and you lose space. And
Mhm.
it's not that I'm so much of a freak. Well, tell me how you want it done. I don't care, but let's have some continuity. But when someone does not see it your way, they should have a discussion.
Mm,
Instead, what they do is they feign ignorance. They feign they can't do it. You were wrong. They gaslight you. They groom you to believe, well, you were wrong. If you like it, if you want it this way, then you just do it yourself. And as women, especially, that's what we do. We take on more so it can be
mhm,
done right, because otherwise it takes us twice as long. I can't make the dinner or the dessert I want. I have to go back to the store because I only got one ingredient, not 5. There's
mm.
so many things. And that's a small example, but I bet your listeners can think about so many times, whether it's at work, a personal relationship, even with their kids. It's easy to put away your clothes, but if the child doesn't do it, doesn't do it, doesn't do it, or does it wrong when they do it, it's because they want mom to do it.
Mhm.
So you have to make some decisions. Do you let it go and look the other way? Do you walk away from the relationship? Why is this happening? Do you call them out on it? I mean, there's lots of things, but it's weaponized incompetence because it's not real incompetence. It's incompetence to make you do what they don't want to do, and it's a way of controlling you.
So, to anyone listening right now that say is in a maybe a tough relationship, how can they start speaking up? Do you have any tips or ideas?
Yeah, well, one of them is, first of all, to recognize it. Change the dance, change the music.
Mm,
So they have to change what they're asking for, or write a list, or say, and call me if you don't understand. Change whatever the problem is. Look at it from a few different angles to give that other person the option of a backup plan, a double or triple backup plan. So when they come to you and say they did it wrong or they didn't understand or whatever, you can say, that's interesting because, and then decide if that relationship is worth keeping. Obviously, you can't give up the one with your kids. I hope you don't want to. I gave up the one with my husband because I'm not going to be controlled like that. And there were other. It wasn't just that, but there were a lot of things. I give up friendship relationships like that because it's a relationship of being used, not appreciated. So you have to set some boundaries and some guidelines and then honor those, because if you do not honor those, no one else will either. So there's a lot that you can do. setting up boundaries, looking at things differently, setting up some guidelines, having a conversation about what's going on with them. Maybe they don't have the time, maybe they resent you, whatever it is, put it out on the table and talk about it. Because I have to say, a lot of people run away from controversy. But you know what? If you can talk about the controversy, you don't have to be right about it, neither do they. But if you can lay it all out on the table, then you're going to come up with a right conclusion.
Hmm. I like that. That's a great tip there to talk about it. But then there's the situation where it continues to escalate because when you have that tension and if you are noticing that it's getting worse and worse, that energy is growing and it can get dangerous. Maybe it's time to leave and don't be
Yep.
ashamed. Like I love that you left your husband. There was just tension there. But
Yes.
but it could go in different directions. Now, in your
Yeah.
book,
And
yeah,
let me just go back to that
yeah,
1 minute. And that is just
yeah,
that causes a certain trauma in you. And if you
yeah,
need to, there's no shame. In fact, it's a sign of strength to go to a trained therapist to
yeah.
talk it out, to make sure you are clear that you are not crazy, and then invite them into therapy. If they don't want to join you in that, there's your answer. Take a walk.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, in your book, you open with safety is a complete sentence. It's not a question mark. It's a human right. And that really hit home because I believe that. And I think a lot of listeners that know you and just anyone believes that with any relationship. But the reason I brought this up and why I want to talk about this, and we're on the topic of relationships, I actually just had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago a woman named Kate Alexander. She's a woman who has this company or a charity. It's called End Violence Everywhere, Eve. And her story is horrific. She is a survivor of domestic violence, and her life was almost taken from her. But when she went to seek justice, the flaws in the Canadian system were absolutely shocking. Her abuser was released on a $500 bail, and she was almost killed. Sorry. It's
Yeah.
emotional. It was
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to bring it into this conversation because obviously you're in the US, I live in Canada. And it was heartbreaking to hear the story because I was like, why would that happen? So I'd like to hear your take on that. What do you think the US system does right when it comes to protecting survivors? Because I've heard better things about the US. And where do you think, as a judge, we still have room to grow?
So we have in the U.S. Lethality factors. I do not know the Canadian law. I know I've been in Canada and have relatives there, and I've testified before Parliament. I do know there are some differences. I've had a lot of Canadian students. There are some similarities. I think we can learn from each other, but because I think that the United States gets, if I had to grade it as a professor, I think the United States gets a C, which
Oh,
is average,
okay.
even though we are the best system in the world, I believe. But we
Mm,
have lethality factors where we look at, is this person dangerous? Have they failed to show up for court before? What is their history in terms of assaultive behavior? There's a whole bunch of factors that we consider.
mm,
But also we consider the safety of the public and the victim, will they reoffend? And out on bond, it is tough for a victim to feel safe. So we use GPS tethers. I set higher bonds. We have what's called Public Act 53, which is a no contact order. If they violate, the police can immediately arrest. They don't have to wait for anything. It's already there. They violated the law, arrest. And then we'll deal with it, within 24 hours, arraign them and all of that. So we have some immediate action that we take in the US when we release someone. But somebody who's had some violent assaultive behavior like that, they're not getting out with most thinking judges with a $5,000 bond or with a PR bond. It's going to be much higher. It's going to be with the GPS tethers so that we have them anywhere from 500 to 2,000 feet away. They can't show up at their work, a house, and that GPS tether tells us. And immediately it lights up if they get near that person. And there's an arrest made. Plus, it serves as evidence of where they were and what they've done. And if they cut that off, that's another felony.
Wow, that's good to know. I'm glad you clarified that. That really opened my eyes how different things can be depending on where you live. So
Yes,
that's wonderful to
absolutely.
know. Wonderful. Okay. So in your book, you also wrote the best, first, and the most important relationship to maintain is the one with yourself. I love that because it really resonated with me. It's so simple and yet so overlooked. We forget that it's about us, right? So when it comes to relationships, all different scales, obviously. I know you've touched on the red flags earlier, but I'm curious when it comes to peace and personal growth, because you talk about this in your book, and I think our listeners will benefit from it. What are some signs you personally look for when you know if a relationship, like if a relationship is lifting you up versus holding you back? And if you found yourself in that situation, if a listener has, how would you handle it, Rosemarie?
Okay, so I'm going to try to answer this. I think
Okay,
I understand the
sorry.
question.
Okay.
So first and foremost, you have to be your own best friend. You need to make sure that you matter to yourself and that you matter to everyone that you choose to spend your time with, your body with, your money on, whatever it is that you are doing with that person. And when
Hmm.
you matter the most to yourself, and I'm not talking about being selfish and arrogant, but I'm talking about just as a human being, understanding you have the right to be safe and you have the right to say no and you have the right to be educated and eat what you want and all of those things, then you can also be a best friend to other people. But when you're looking at, do other people treat you well? You really have to listen to, how are they uplifting you? Are they uplifting you? Ask yourself those questions. I've been in relationships where I've wanted to take a class or do aerobics or whatever it is, something for me. And the question is, well, why do you need to do that? Or why do you think you need to wear that? And I hate that question. Why? Why shames and blames? It makes me feel like, okay, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to share with you. There's obviously something that you are thinking that I'm doing wrong. So
Hmm.
if you are being wide or would have, should have, could have to death, in your relationship, that is not a healthy relationship. When
Hmm.
you feel that you have set some goals and you really enjoy some things that bring you joy, and you're able to share those, and that person shares that joy with you, then you've got someone who's uplifting you. If they bring you down, if your gut hurts when you think, oh, I ought to
Hmm.
share this, but they might not like it, so you're hesitating. That's not a healthy relationship, and you need to change it. So if it's a spouse, maybe you want to go to therapy. If it's someone you're dating or you just have a friendship relationship, it's not a good one. Take a walk. The thing is, this world is so big.
Hmm.
You can find more people that are on your side than those that hurt you. Let the ones that hurt you go without regret, because that's a way of saying yes to yourself and knowing that that you matter under every circumstance.
Mm. You also write in your book about imposter syndrome, and it's a common theme these days. We hear about it. And why do you think so many women, especially high achievers, end up apologizing for their success? And that was something I also liked when I was reading your book. And how do you help your students from shrinking themselves, and beating that imposter syndrome?
One of the things I do for my friends, colleagues, my students especially, is to compliment them. So I had a student, and I think I talk about her in the book, who always asks a lot of questions, and she would start with, I'm sorry, I have another question. And I brought her after class. I asked her to stay, and I said, stop apologizing. You are actually the brave one. You are the one who's asking the questions. I am here to mentor, to help, to teach. Don't apologize for that. Embrace it and
Mm.
just ask me all the questions you want. That's what I'm here for. And show the others that they're afraid to ask the question and you're not. And then you will rise higher and faster and farther than they will. And do that in your school and in your work and in your life. And she reached out a couple of years later and said, I've always followed your advice. And I can't believe how much I've accomplished because I'm not afraid to ask questions. I don't apologize for it. And people seem to respect me more for not apologizing
Hmm.
for it. And so I think that what happens is, let's talk about women. There is a thing out there where you can't be beautiful and have brains. Bullshit.
Mhm.
First of all, every human is beautiful and we all have brains. Let's use them and let's flaunt it. If you have a new outfit that you spent a lot of money on, especially, you're going to go to that party and want to say, hey, look at my new outfit. It took me 3 months to save for it. Well, you know what? You have inner beauty, inner brains, and outer beauty. And let's flaunt that too in the same exact way and uplift ourselves. We should not be diminishing ourselves just because we think it might offend somebody else. That is their problem. I have enough on my plate than to worry about dumping other people's problems on my plate. I own it. I live it. I don't care what other people think. I do not have room on my plate for what they think. I care about what I think, what I want to do, and who I am in the world, and who I want to be, and what I want to achieve.
In your book, you say confidence is the ability to be who you want to be rather than comparing yourself to others. That also
Yes.
resonated. Let's be honest, when you're starting out in anything, it's so easy to get caught into some kind of comparison, or you look out there and you're like, and you measure yourself against others. And maybe you shrink yourself and apologize. But how do you start bringing self-belief for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they're not good enough? What do you say to that person?
I have a lot of people, literally thousands of people who've come up to me and say, I want to be you. And I have always said, no, you don't.
Mm,
You need to be and will be better than me. You have your own right to choose what you want to do, and you can go higher and be better than me. It took me 40 plus years in immersion of law and all the multiple things I've done to be me. You can't
mhm,
be me overnight. Don't put that on yourself. That is an unreasonable expectation. Every day you learn, you make those mistakes, you flip the script into positivity, and you will be better than me. The expectation is to be better than you were yesterday,
mm,
not to be someone else. If I strived to be all of the people who I admire, I would wallow every single day, disappoint myself, and not accomplish a thing.
mm. That reminds me with something that you wrote in your book. Ended, well, I think the final chapter is be your own hero. So what does that look like every day? What does that look like in everyday life to you? Not just in the big courtroom moments, but in the quiet, tough choices that you make every day. What does that mean to you?
It means that even when I'm at my lowest, when I think I can't go on, when there's a problem that I think is not resolvable, I pick myself up and tell myself that I can do it, I will do it, and I start making a list or making contacts or asking for help, depending on what the issue is. And it's always worked for me because I have myself to rely on. I have learned that as much as people say they're there, and some are, the one who is always there is myself. I do a lot of talking to myself in the mirror. I am my own best friend. I look at the light in my eyes, I encourage myself, and then I look for options and opportunities and turn those into results.
I love that. Thank you for those words. I'd love to talk to you for a long time, Rosemarie, but we're running short here on time.
Well,
Any last words?
I'm always happy to come back. I enjoy
Okay.
speaking with you. Love your show. I would tell everybody to trust their gut, be your own guidepost. Don't let somebody else be the guidepost that you want to follow. You make your own choices, and those choices need to be something that make you joyful, not someone else's joy, but bring you joy first. And then you will share that joy and bring on others who share that joy, and choose what you want to do and let go of those things that you feel you have to do.
Mm.
If they are things that you have to do because, your parent died and now you have to do the funeral, I mean, those are things that happen in life. I'm not talking about those, but there are things that people pile on us and say, you have to do this. The answer is no. Learn it, use it appropriately, and say yes to yourself first and bring on those things that bring you joy, happiness, fulfillment, and take you farther than you thought you were so that tomorrow you wake up and say, yay, I did that. And I want the next mountain to climb because I am going to climb that and the next one.
There you have it, listeners. Some positive words from Judge Rosemarie Aquilina. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Your wisdom, your stories, your heart is felt. Even if it's through a screen, I can feel it.
Thank you.
And so for anyone listening, I hope this conversation has left you thinking about the impact that we can all have on ourselves and on the environment around us, and we can bring more compassion to our everyday. Now, pick up her book. It's available on Amazon, and I know it's also available on many platforms.
Most bookstores will be able to order it. If you can't find it, then reach out to Berman Books or me personally. We'll make sure you get your copy. But I really appreciate every order, and remember to put in those reviews. They really do help.
You can click on the show notes. I'll put all the links in there. And definitely, if you liked this episode, please like, subscribe. Everything's independently funded. All the support and love is always appreciated. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.
And thank you.
If you enjoyed our interview today, please share and like it. And if you have a unique story of how you are creatively engaging with our world, I can help you share it in a multitude of different ways. Whether it's through photography, film, or being a guest on my podcast, be sure to reach out. My mission is to make you and your brand stand out. Please visit our website, www.riseupandfixit.com. Now, this is Rise and Thrive with Ms. Monday, brought to you by the Rise Up and Fix It podcast.